If our time is only valuable because it ends, then what exactly are we doing with it? Most people are waiting for their real life to begin, waiting for the right version of themselves, the right clarity, the right confidence, the right moment when the fear finally disappears and they can move cleanly toward what matters. And while they wait, the pages keep filling anyway. Not later, now. Every hesitation, every distraction, every year spent emotionally absent from your own life, that is still writing. That is still the book. There is a strange thing people do when they think about death. They imagine it happening at the end, a distant event, a final scene, a door closing far away from this moment. But death is not only waiting at the end of life. It is creating the shape of life right now. Without endings, there would be no urgency, no meaning, no movement, no reason to choose one thing over another because every possibility could be lived forever. Imagine a song that never ends. At first it feels infinite, then unbearable. Because without the ending, the notes stop mattering. The beauty of the song is not separate from the fact that it disappears. And the same is true for you. Your life does not gain meaning despite ending. It gains meaning because it does. The terrifying part is not death itself. The terrifying part is realizing how much of your life has already passed unnoticed because you believed you were still preparing to begin. Think carefully. How many versions of yourself have already disappeared? The child you were, gone. The person you were 5 years ago, gone. Entire emotional worlds that once felt permanent have vanished completely. Certain fears, certain dreams, certain people, even certain voices inside your own mind, gone. And yet while living through them, you thought they would last forever. One day you will miss this exact version of your life. Even the parts you currently resent, the exhausted mornings, the uncertainty, the unfinished work, the small apartment, the loneliness you keep trying to escape, because one day this entire chapter will no longer exist. And you do not understand that while you are inside it, that is what time actually is, not clocks, disappearance. Time is measured by what can no longer be returned to. That is why certain memories hurt when they surface unexpectedly. Not because the moment itself was perfect. Because it ended. A hallway from childhood. A specific winter afternoon. The sound of someone laughing in another room. A version of yourself who still believed certain things were possible. What hurts is not only the memory. It is the knowledge that the world containing that memory no longer exists. You cannot step back into it, and suddenly you understand something horrifying. You are standing inside moments right now that will someday feel exactly like that. So, if death creates the value of time, why do so many people live as if they have an unlimited amount of it? Because the mind protects itself through postponement, not consciously. Quietly, you say, I'll start when things calm down. I'll become who I am later. I'll create after I fix myself. I'll love my life once I understand it. But later is one of the most dangerous words ever invented, because later creates the illusion that life is still approaching you, when in reality, it has already arrived. And it keeps arriving every morning whether you participate in it or not. There are people who have spent decades waiting to feel ready, ready to create, ready to leave, ready to speak honestly, ready to begin. And suddenly they are 40, 50, 70, still rehearsing a life they never entered, not because they were lazy, because they thought time was something stored somewhere instead of something being spent continuously. Right now, while you listen to this, something is ending, not dramatically, quietly. The person you were this morning no longer fully exists. Even this hour is disappearing while you hear these words. And that can sound depressing until you realize something else. If endings create value, then attention becomes sacred. Because the only way to honor something temporary is to actually inhabit it while it exists. Most people do not live their lives. They skim them, half present, half distracted, emotionally elsewhere, always leaning toward the next thing. And because of that, entire years vanish without leaving weight behind. Not because nothing happened, because they were never fully there for it. There are conversations you barely remember because your mind was somewhere else while they happened. There are ordinary days that became unforgettable because for one brief moment, you were completely inside them. Presence changes the density of time. A single honest moment can feel larger than an entire distracted year. The days that survive are the days you actually entered. There is another misunderstanding about mortality. People think awareness of death should make life smaller, more fearful, more cautious, more controlled. But the opposite is true. The people most afraid of death are often the ones who have not fully lived, because unfinished living creates panic. When someone has spent years abandoning themselves, avoiding risk, avoiding truth, avoiding participation, death feels like theft. Not because existence ends, because existence barely began. But someone who has truly entered life, someone who has loved honestly, created honestly, failed honestly, changed honestly, experiences time differently. Not peacefully, not fearlessly, but completely. There is a difference. So what does it actually mean to write inside time consciously, not philosophically, practically? It means understanding that your life is being authored by repetition, not intention. The things you repeat become your identity, the thoughts repeated, the routines repeated, the emotional positions repeated. You become what you practice returning to. That is why years can disappear while nothing internally changes. Because the same emotional loop keeps writing the same paragraph over and over again. You tell yourself, this is temporary. But repetition is never temporary. Repetition becomes structure. And structure becomes identity. One avoided conversation repeated long enough becomes loneliness. One abandoned ambition repeated long enough becomes grief. One refusal to speak honestly repeated long enough becomes an entire personality organized around hiding. A person can disappear long before death arrives, not physically, internally. You have seen it before. Someone whose eyes no longer fully meet the world. Someone moving through routines without contact. Someone who slowly replaced aliveness with management. This is what happens when survival becomes more important than participation. Life narrows, not all at once, gradually, until the person no longer remembers what it felt like to be fully awake inside their own existence. And this can happen to anyone. especially intelligent people, because intelligence often becomes a way of observing life instead of entering it, analyzing, preparing, explaining, standing outside the experience instead of risking contact with it. But life does not reward spectatorship. It rewards participation, messy, imperfect, uncontrolled participation. You do not become yourself by thinking about becoming yourself. You become yourself through repeated contact with reality. That is why difficult experiences change people more than fantasies do. Reality leaves weight behind, and weight shapes the soul. There are moments that divide an entire life into before and after, not because they were dramatic, because they were real. A conversation where someone finally told the truth. A failure that removed illusion. A goodbye that revealed what actually mattered. A morning where you realized your current life could no longer contain who you were becoming. These moments hurt because reality hurts when it first arrives, but they also awaken, because suddenly you are no longer sleepwalking. You are inside your life again, and maybe that is the real function of death. Not simply ending life, but preventing numbness from becoming permanent, because endings force attention. When something can disappear, it becomes visible. Think about how often people only recognize value at the moment of loss. Not because value suddenly appeared, because endings remove distraction. And for one brutal moment, reality becomes perfectly clear. You suddenly see, this mattered, this person mattered, this hour mattered, this ordinary life mattered. Too late for some things, but maybe not too late for this moment. There is still time, not unlimited time, real time, which is more valuable. The fantasy of endless time destroys urgency, but finite time creates focus. Suddenly, certain arguments no longer matter. Certain performances no longer matter. Certain fears no longer deserve authority over your entire existence. You begin asking different questions, not, how do I avoid discomfort, but, what deserves my remaining time? That changes a person, because now life becomes directional instead of reactive. You stop organizing yourself around avoidance and begin organizing yourself around meaning, even if meaning is difficult, even if it costs something, even if nobody else fully understands it. Because eventually everyone arrives at the same realization. You cannot save time. You can only spend it. And whether consciously or unconsciously, you already are. Every day is handwriting. The frightening thing is how quickly years organize themselves. One routine becomes a season. One season becomes a decade. And people wake up stunned by their own lives, not because time moved fast, because attention moved elsewhere. That is why memory feels uneven. Certain years disappear almost completely. Others remain painfully vivid. The vivid years were lived consciously. The forgotten years were survived automatically. So the question becomes, what would happen if you stopped treating your life like rehearsal? What if this was not preparation? What if this exhausted, unfinished, uncertain chapter is the real thing? Because it is. This is the life, not later, not after transformation, not after clarity, not after certainty. Now, this room, this age, this body, this season of confusion, this is the material, and someday it will be gone too. There is no perfect way to spend a life, only honest ways. A life becomes meaningful when it is inhabited fully enough that its ending leaves shape behind. Not status, not image, shape. The invisible mark left by someone who truly entered their own existence, someone who paid attention, someone who remained emotionally awake, someone who stopped postponing themselves. That does not require greatness. It requires contact, real contact with the days you are already inside, drinking coffee while fully there, listening while fully there, creating while fully there, walking through grief while fully there, standing inside uncertainty without abandoning yourself. This is how time deepens. Not through achievement alone, through presence. One day this version of you will disappear. The voice in your head right now, the things you currently fear, the questions currently haunting you, gone, and another version will exist in your place. And eventually that version will disappear too. This has been happening your entire life already. Death is not only waiting at the end, it is continuously transforming you through time, closing versions, opening others, and maybe the goal was never permanence. Maybe the goal was participation. To arrive fully enough that your life actually touches you while it is happening. To stop standing outside your own existence, waiting for permission to begin. To understand that meaning is not discovered after life becomes clear. Meaning is created through the way attention meets temporary things. A song matters because it ends. A season matters because it changes. A life matters because it disappears. And because it disappears, this moment matters more than you think. The question is not how much time you have left. The question is, what are you writing into the part that remains?